So, pellet guns are in focus today because after nearly a week of Delhi police insisting that pellet guns had not been used to disperse the crowd on the July 20th crackdown during those protests, now the story is different. The Hindu has reported and the PTI has reported that there is a general diary entry at the Parliament Street police station which says that personnel of the Rapid Action Force fired plastic pellets from an anti-riot gun on orders of a Deputy Commissioner of Police. Now, the diary records say the firing took place on orders of the DCP, and it notes the deployment of ballistic cartridges loaded with plastic pellets. Separately, the Indian Express has also reported that the CPRF's internal inquiry has identified one RAF personnel who fired 7 rounds, 5 struck protesters, and 2 hit the ground. Now, the PTI report basically says that the incident was actually registered. So every police station has a diary in which they have to record everything that happens to the with the personnel of that police station. So on the 22nd of July, 2 days after that protest, at about 1:24 p.m., there's a general diary entry at Parliamentary police station that says a deputy commandant rank officer of the RAF gave the command to use plastic pellets along with tear smoke shells and non-lethal munitions. The officer stated that blue dungaree wearing force, which was on duty in Zone 1 of Jantar Mantar alongside the Deputy Commissioner of Police rank officer, were firing, and the RAF fired 55 non-electrical shells, 15 electrical shells, 5 tear gas grenades, and 2 rounds of anti-riot guns, 2 rounds of plastic pellets. This is after, of course, the Delhi police had vehemently denied the use of plastic pellets at all. And it's very significant because now there is a case before the Supreme Court asking for these pellet guns to be basically banned from use completely. But it made me ask the question of what is a pellet gun and how does it work? Now, the name is misleading. People imagine an air gun, but it's not an air gun. What India uses is the RAF's 12-bore pump-action anti-riot gun. And the official documents refer to it as a projectile attack gun or a PAG or an anti-riot gun. And mechanically, it works like a shotgun because it has a cartridge and the cartridge is filled with dozens of tiny pellets. The pellets could either be metal, made of lead metal, or it could be plastic. Some cases they are rubber. When the trigger is pulled, the cartridge bursts open when it leaves the barrel, and the pellets are spread over a widening cone of an area. That's the visual that's on your screen right now. And unlike a rifle bullet that follows a single predictable path, the pellets actually disperse over an area. And it's spread so wide that it becomes really useful in crowd control. Now, pellet guns are also very controversial because the pellets cannot be controlled once they leave the barrel. So from close range, they can be very tightly grouped, and they can strike a single mass and carry enough force to penetrate the skin and soft tissue. If they travel further, they spread wider and wider, increasing the number of people who can be struck by a single shot. And the weapon is intended to be less lethal than live ammunition. And less lethal doesn't mean harmless. It means it's unlikely to kill. Now, medical literature has documented injuries ranging from puncture wounds across the body, deep bruising, muscle injury, facial fractures if it hits from close range, broken teeth, nerve damage, and of course, severe eye injuries and chest and abdominal injuries. Ophthalmologists say that plastic pellets traveling at a high speed can rupture the eyeball and detach the retina and permanently destroy vision because the eye is a very soft, it's like a peeled grape, right? So even if plastic is moving really fast and it hits you in the eye, then it will cause permanent damage. Now, unlike lead pellets, and there are an x-ray, and this is available on the internet, you can see the x-rays where the pellets are actually visible as they embed themselves into the body because they cross the skin and they cross the soft tissue. Plastic pellets or rubber pellets do not appear clearly in ordinary x-rays. So diagnosis makes it even more difficult because once they've entered the body, it's difficult to find out where they are because you can't see them in an ordinary x-ray. So the extent of the injury actually depends on several factors: the firing distance, the velocity at which the pellets were traveling, and which part of the body it struck. Now, where did this weapon come from? So in the beginning of the second half of the 20th century, 1950, 1960 onwards, police forces around the world were experimenting with what they described as less lethal. And I'm saying less lethal because it's not non-lethal, it's less lethal. So they wanted to find a way to stop a crowd or a violent crowd without using live ammunition. So something between a baton and a rifle. So between a lathi charge and a rifle, is there something in between that? And they developed at that point tear gas, water cannons, rubber bullets, plastic bullets, beanbag rounds, pellet firing shotguns. All of these things came up, and the objective was very simple: reduce the fatalities and give the police enough force to disperse a crowd very quickly. But since then, and that was a while ago, right? 1950, 1960, since then, doctors and human rights organizations have argued that these weapons still blind and permanently disable and in some cases kill people. Where was the pellet gun first used in the world? In the UK. The UK was using it against Northern Ireland in what they called the Troubles at the early 1970s. British security forces used rubber bullets, plastic bullets, and other munitions to disperse rioters. The Indian version is very different from the British version of 1970. And the Indian version is actually developed by our DRDO, the Defense Research and Development Organization. And that was where the first anti-riot pellet gun was developed by India. And it's now manufactured by our ordnance factory in India. So it's made by our ordnance factory board. When did India first start using pellet guns? Many, many years later. In 2010 is our first recorded operational use, 14th August 2010, Sopor in Kashmir. Security forces used the weapon against protesters attempting to overrun the Rashtriya Rifles camp. The decision came after months of violent protests in which 112 civilians had already died. Pellet guns were presented as a humanitarian alternative to live ammunition. And they've also then brought up a lot of controversy about the way they're used. And because in a tight space, in a residential area, if they're fired, they tend to move so fast that they could hit a window or they could hit someone who's looking out of a window, who's not necessarily participating in anything that's happening on the street in front of them. There are, of course, rules to use them according to the official standard operating procedures for India. Pellet guns are the last resort for any crowd control weapon. So the security forces have to first, of course, make loud announcements. Then they have to try persuasion, barricades, tear gas, water cannon, lathi charge. Pellet guns are used when personnel are trained, and the only trained people are meant to use them. They're supposed to fire only below the waist because a pellet that strikes your leg will cause a painful injury. But if it strikes anywhere in this area, it could cause permanent damage. Now it's become a big issue in Delhi because initially, remember, the police said that they didn't use it at all, but the injuries are difficult to pass off. Nothing else causes those injuries that we are seeing in Delhi other than pellet guns. Now, we understand that plastic pellets were used, but like I told you, if we look at these injuries, they are in the top half of the person's body. So plastic pellets can be fairly dangerous in causing permanent damage. Now there is a case before Supreme Court, and I've actually uploaded another video with Yashivardhan Azad, who is the petitioner. He's a former IPS officer. He is the one who's placed the petition before the Supreme Court, calling pellets inappropriate and they should not be used to disperse civilian crowds. The case before Supreme Court basically asked to ban the pellet guns completely when using it for civilian crowd control, to order compensation for anyone who was injured, ensure medical treatment, rehabilitation, long-term care, and lay down uniform national level guidelines for the use of force for public protests. So obviously, this is going to be examined, and along with it, there will be other questions of who ordered the pellet guns to be brought into Jantar Mantar at all, who gave the order to fire that pellet gun, and was there enough reason? Did the police feel that the crowd was actually violent and that was the only way to disperse the crowd? Had all of the other precautionary measures, the various steps before that, been exercised before the pellet gun was used? Now, all of these questions are going to come up in both investigation and in the Supreme Court. So this is a story we're going to keep a very close eye on. Leave me a comment in the comment section if you believe it was warranted for use in Jantar Mantar in Delhi.